China's a big force.
Well, and China's having some issues right now. Their economy is in downturn.
Well, which kind of makes me wonder, are they going to call our debt into, I mean,
well, that's part of the issue. They could call the debt in at any time, but they are in a part of an economic downturn, which they have not really felt when the rest of the world was in economic downturn. They didn't really feel it. Part of it is because the emergence of a more capitalist society that was being permitted by the communist regime in the People's Republic of China. That has started to spur things. And of course, part of the reason they're having an economic downturn is because the people in China are starting to speak out. And that is something that we as Americans should be praying for and support, because the people of China have been subject to terrible actions of the regime. They do not have freedom of religion. They do not have, while churches exist, they exist with the authority of the state.
Or underground.
Or they're underground. And so we need to be praying for that. There's one thing that we don't hear a lot, there's a lot of terrorism in China. And so we need to be praying for them, and we need to make sure that we have someone who's up to date on China policy. Hillary Clinton spent very little time on China as Secretary of State, which is shocking in the sense that if you were doing your job as Secretary of State, China is one of the places that you would spend a lot of time.
But she spent enough time to get some money deposited into the Clintons' accounts.
Well, those
while she was negotiating that Beijing.
Well, that's a climate. That was a climate bill that was coming out of Beijing, which she, her famous story is that her and President Obama ran across this convention center back and forth searching for the Chinese to try to make this deal happen. Of course, the Germans, the French, the Russians, the Brazilians, and two other nations who were involved in those negotiations say that never happened. So once again, it's a story that we have.
That's a lot of voices against one.
Yeah, and it's a problem. Number one, we should not be negotiating a climate deal with the People's Republic of China, who's one of the world's worst polluters. You can brick the fragments that are in the air in China's biggest cities on days. They build bricks out of this pollution in the air in Shanghai and in Beijing. Okay, this is not.
Wow.
The second thing that she did, that she neglected as Secretary of State, was the actions of the people of Hong Kong, who were. They had an autonomous relationship. Hong Kong had been released by the British Crown back to the People's Republic of China in 2000. They were allowed to have an independent government in the sense that these were people who'd lived under a democracy surrounded by a communist country. And so the people there were not accustomed to the oppression that comes down from this. And in fact, Hong Kong at one time was one of the most wealthy per square foot, per capita cities in the world. Since then, since the Chinese government has come in and taken, there were protests, there were mass killings, by the way, in Hong Kong. And the Secretary of State made a couple statements, but really ignored the attacks on protesters in Hong Kong. And now you have this full takeover, which is still, there's still resistance there, but resistance can only hang on so long, especially under an oppressive regime. So China is a complex issue. Now, of course, Donald Trump has relations with China. They do a lot of trade between China and his companies. He works well with China. He's talked about how China is taking advantage of the government.
He feels confident in his abilities with China.
And once again, this is another contrast in the sense that Bernie Sanders spoke about currency manipulation with the Chinese government, which is something that he was talking about with Hillary Clinton. Once again, that is another contrast to bring in those Bernie blue collar white male voters that were supporting him for that. Donald Trump has an in with that, and he should use it.
Well, it's going to be interesting. And, of course, there was a lot of talk today on the Trump speech about, how many millions of dollars the Clintons have amassed from foreign countries into their their personal pockets and their foundations. But
well, and I will post the confirmation hearings for Senator Clinton when she became secretary, because one of the main agreements when she became Secretary of State, she signed a binding legal document that said that she would not be involved in the day-to-day activities of the Clinton Global Initiative as she was Secretary of State, as it would be a conflict of interest for its purposes, whether it be philanthropic or fundraising. She signed this document and assured senators that she would not break it. She did.
Repeatedly.
Yes, she did.
Repeatedly.
And we know that now, specifically with some of the emails that were declassified.
That's why people like Trump and others have hopped on this. It's not to, talk smack about her as much as it is to bring an awareness of she just isn't someone that can be trusted. Signing an agreement means nothing to her.
Well, she's not followed the tenets of any agreement that she's made going forward, and she's not. She didn't act as Secretary of State as she promised in her 2008 campaign for president. The 3 a.m. phone call. The phone call came, and Secretary Clinton was not around. Okay, so that's an issue. Yes. That's an issue about going forward, whether she's going to be qualified to become president. Mm-hmm. So,
well, the email situation still sticks in my craw, and I don't know why. I think I do know, but I can't be certain of why our government would be dragging its feet to come out with either an indictment or just absolute, exoneration for her. I don't know why there can't be an expediency about this. I feel like there should be. I feel like the American people need that kind of closure one way or the other. If it's going to be a slap on the wrist, then, let's just come forth and give her a slap on the wrist like she's had so many opportunities to have. We'll be back.
WFIA, The Spirit.
You want to feel connected, informed, included, inspired. So when important things happen, we're here, your local radio and TV broadcasters, America's #1 source for news, weather, and information on your radio, TV, computer, tablet, and smartphone. We are broadcasters, always here for you, wherever here may be. Tell Washington local stations matter by texting radio to 52886, furnished by NAB and the station. Message and data rates may apply.
Babies are being saved in Louisville thanks to your support of a Woman's Choice Resource Center. Continue that support and join us Monday, July 11th for the 2016 Rick Bordas Scramble for Life, sponsored by Inside Connect Cable at the beautiful Lake Forest Country Club in eastern Jefferson County. Help support life in our community and enjoy a great day of golf. Register online at awclifesavers.org or call 502-569-0494. Hey, Valley View Church, meet your new pastor, Brian Stone.
Well, good morning, Valley View. Well, me and my family made it here to Louisville. You guys have been so welcoming to us, and I couldn't feel more certain of our call.
Of course, new guests are always welcomed and encouraged to attend either the 9 a.m. or 10:45 a.m. service. From Kingsland Baptist Church in Katy, Texas, welcome head pastor Brian Stone and his wife Holly and their 2 children to Valley View Church. For more info, go to valleyviewchurch.org.
I'm Keith Stevens. Join Donna Cruz and me this weekend for Keep the Faith.
Pete Wilson confronts the way we often think about trust and what we can do about it.
I've said that I trust God with my eternity, but the reality is I have a difficult time trusting Him with my everyday life.
I hope you can join us for Keep the Faith.
Keep the Faith, Saturday night at midnight on WFIA, The Spirit. You're listening to Just Ask Joyce on WFIA, The Spirit.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Garrett. I know there was one issue that you really wanted to bring to the
well, we were talking about the economy with China. There's a big issue with the economy. We've talked a little bit about it, and we've talked a lot on our social media. There's this thing called Brexit, which is the British vote to exit the European Union. That's going to be big coverage Thursday evening. You're going to see it on a lot of the major networks starting about 11 p.m. You'll have coverage over how the British people vote, whether to remain in the European Union or not. It has a lot to do with immigration, has a lot to do with the issues that they've had in Britain, of course, with the murder of Joe Cox, the member of Parliament there. We send our thoughts and prayers to her young children and her family as they have mourned this week the loss of this up-and-coming member of Parliament. It brings in the security issues for Britain. Of course, this man was a British citizen that shot her, but Britain has had, and Europe itself has had immigration.
Yeah,
exactly.
Orlando shooter.
Yeah, and British. And European Union has had a terrible time with the migration of Syrian refugees and other refugees from the Middle East who are coming from the war in Syria. That is part of why Britain wants to remove itself from the European Union, as well as the decisions that are made. The European Union is being upheld by 3 or 4 prosperous states, while others, have squandered their budgets, have squandered their resources, and it cannot remain. Mm-hmm. So I believe personally that it will be very close. The British people, I would assume, will vote to remove themselves from the European